in the meantime, we're going to first start by talking about kingdom order. Now, I have a huge passion for kingdom order, and really my passion only comes from my call and my mandate that I have about it. Because before God gave me a mandate, I did not care even a little bit about kingdom order. And so many of you may be the same way. You're like, oh, kingdom order sounds boring. But that's how it was for me. I am in the natural, in my soul, not an order kind of person. Oddly, in the kingdom, I'm the opposite. So I am all about order when it comes to the kingdom, because God has really shown me that and shown me how important it is. And so I want to share with you a little bit about why, because here is how it works. If you are a reflection of what is happening in the kingdom, in heaven, then the Holy Spirit can come and fill that reflection with his likeness. Okay. And if we are not a reflection of that, of what it is like in heaven, then basically we are just working in our own power. And so here's really what I mean, especially when it comes to kingdom order. There has to be kingdom order, and an order in heaven. Here's kind of how it works. There's God at the top, right? And he works, Yahweh works with Jesus and Holy Spirit on a bench of three over the rest of the kingdom. And what happens is he has created these different courts and all of that to be like this. In the earth, his order is a reflection of that. So it's like this, okay? I'm not doing a very good job of doing a little thing, but you guys can get the point. So there you go. Look at Tom. He's making it happen. So it's like I'm talking to kindergartners. No, you guys are not kindergartners, but that's what I do to my kids. Yeah. Anyway, this is what happens when you have a homeschool mom teaching a bunch of adults. Anyway, so what I mean by the reflection is in the earth, we see this little triangle. That's not a good triangle. How did I even do that? There's a triangle. Anyway, at the bottom here is a bench of three that helps, instead of governing from top down, we are governing from bottom up. And so what that means is that we are there to lift up. Whoa, hello. I forgot to put everybody on mute. Hold on a second. Okay, everybody is on mute, and if you need to unmute yourself, please go ahead and do that. Now, Aaron Michael, you're the co-host. So anyway, God has set it up to where there's a bench of three that helps govern every blueprint that he gives. And so a bench of three, instead of being this, we're above everybody and we are going to, govern everything from the top down, it's the opposite. So we are actually at the bottom governing up. So we are helping basically push everybody up and helping everyone else outwork the ministry. So instead of, you've seen a lot of churches, okay, if you haven't, I've been a part of a lot of churches where there's a top-down kind of leadership, and it's basically, say, the pastor, and he's expected to do everything. And I mean, it's not really a healthy kind of leadership. The larger the church gets, the more leadership they have, but it never has a kingdom order. Not never, that's an exaggeration. But in my experience, most of the churches have had no sort of kingdom order. They have had a lot of committees, they've had a lot of teams, but there's never been any, well, God has said to put this many people here and this many people here and do this. It's always been, what's a good idea? We'll get together and let's come up with our most clever ideas about how to govern this thing. Right? That's my experience, at least in the United States. I've been in ministry for a long time, ever since I've been an adult. It's not as long as some of you have been alive, but for me, I've dealt with a lot of ministries, and this is generally what happens. And when that happens and you're not actually using God's kingdom order, then unfortunately, you're doing a lot of things that are for your own kingdom instead of his kingdom. even with good intentions. And so the hard thing is you can have the best intentions with the Lord, but if you're not receiving what he wants you to do and outworking that, then it's not going to work. And so everybody will be attached to a blueprint. Some will receive blueprints, some will not receive them. I only figured this out the hard way because I thought everybody received blueprints, and a blueprint is just like what you would receive a blueprint for a house, right? It's something that is basically, here's how it should work, this is what it should look like. It's not the fullness of it, it's not working, it's just a picture basically. God gives blueprints to his people for ministries, for businesses, all sorts of things. And I thought that everyone was supposed to receive a blueprint. And I had not received any blueprints, and I had people around me who had. And I went to the Lord. We were going to this scroll room, and I said, okay, I would like to receive blueprint. And I was told, you cannot receive a blueprint. And I was like a little crushed, actually. I went away from that experience going, what's wrong with me? Am I not mature enough? What have I done wrong? I went through this whole thing like in my soul, not from the Lord, by the way, but that's what I was doing in myself. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to go back and ask, why can't I receive a blueprint? What do I need to do? What am I doing wrong? And so I went back and asked, and I was told, you're not supposed to receive blueprints. You're supposed to give blueprints. And if you guys don't know, the main spiritual gift that I have in the heavenlies is that I'm a giver. And so what this means is I receive things to give them. So I'm actually part of a court it's called the Court of Judges, and that's where blueprints are released from. And I didn't understand that that was part of what I was going to do. I just thought somehow not as good as everybody else, whatever. And so just to let you know, you may not receive a blueprint, but you definitely will be attached to one. And when I say that, I mean, you will be someone around you, or maybe not even around you, could be someone like me who you know across the world. Someone will have a blueprint that you go, the spirit in you just says, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to do that part. And so you know that that's what you're supposed to do. And when you're a part of a blueprint, that means you're in the outworking of the blueprint. And so for me, I'm going to show you a blueprint. And I'm going to kind of show you what kingdom order looks like by showing you a blueprint. And this blueprint, just like pretty much every blueprint I've ever seen, is not the fullness. Okay, because blueprints from heaven, God will only release to you what you're ready for. Okay, what you're ready to govern, or so just don't be discouraged if you get 3 mountains out of 7 or something. Just go with whatever the Lord is showing you, and then ask him to show you more as these things get developed. So I'm going to show you a partial blueprint of the Source, who I work with. The ministry that we work with is called The Source. So I'm going to show you part of that blueprint. Okay. I'm going to make it bigger so you guys can see. Is this the right page? You see this? Yes, good. Okay. All right. So here are our mountains. Okay. You might receive a blueprint that has overlapping circles or whatever. Doesn't really matter. God will show you in many different ways. Some people see them as multi-dimensional things, but this is just how we put it on paper. And so this is the Apostolic Resource Center, the hub, the source, okay? So what we have is we have a bench of 3. I'm one of those people on the bench of 3. And what we do is we govern the blueprint. And that means we basically are going into the heavenly realms to make sure everything is going smoothly, to seek more about what people need to do, or what if they need help on something, how they can have help governing these things. When the enemy starts coming up, we deal with that. We go and get legislation for things, So basically, we are doing a lot of the heavenly work. All right. There's a bench of 7 made up of 1 person from each one of these mountains. that their whole purpose is to outwork the blueprint and govern it that way. So they're going to be more of the evangelist, shepherds, that sort of thing. Does that make sense? And a person who's on the bench of 3 could also be on the bench of 7, or just be a part of another one of these mountains. So our mountain's kingdom order. Yeah, you can probably figure that out. From what I'm doing, I'm a part of that. And then also mentoring and training, I'm a part of that mountain. Healing ministries, I'm a part of that. Missions and advocacy, I'm part of that. Word and teaching, a little bit, not much. Worship and intercession, a little bit, not much. Resources and provision, a little bit, not much. Okay, so that's kind of who I am and how I'm attached to this blueprint. But here is an idea of how it goes. So you will have sub-mountains under each one of these mountains. And so as you can see here, not all of our sub-mountains are there, because you'll have 7 mountains under each one of your 7 mountains. And it's always going to be like that. But not all of them are released to us right now. Cute dog, Tom. Anyway, so you can see here like healing. Right now, the things that are revealed to us about the healing mountain: inner healing, soul, mind, will, and emotions; physical or natural healing, laying on of hands, bloodline cleansing. These are the things that we know are part of the healing mountain. Okay, there are lots of things here. I could go into all of it, but it might bore you. But anyway, we have all sorts of different things that are part. I mean, you can see the provision of resources. There's a database that connects all sorts of ministries, facilities that's taking care of the facilities that we have, finances, materials, audio, video, print, and refuge resources. That's kind of like a storehouse of resources for our city of refuge. And so anyway, there are all these different things in each one. And then even those sub-mountains, some of them have mountains. So like the physical healing mountain on the healing mountain that we have has 7 mountains under that are very well developed: essential oils, laying on of hands, anointing, chiropractic, nutrition, water, nutraceuticals, and frequency, quantum physics. So you guys can see like it can go on and on. And so I personally am not part of the inner healing in the healing mountain, but I'm a part of the natural healing. So I do a lot of these things. I don't know, many of you may not know this stuff, but I have a real mandate for natural healing. So I do a lot of this. I do a lot of the bloodline cleansing through the kingdom order, through the courts of heaven. There are different things like that I'm attached to. So I'm not governing the healing mountain, but I am a part of that. It's something I feel connected to. So anyway, I hope that's a little helpful so you can understand a little bit about what a bench of 3 is, what a bench of 7 is, and how that's a reflection of what's happening in the heavenlies. And so these things are not something we came up with. We didn't go, well, what do we think should be a part of this blueprint? It's not like that. You have to receive it from the Lord. And so when you receive it from the Lord, He makes it clear what it is, and He also will start to show you who should be attached to it. So for instance, our worship and intercession mountain, there's someone who we have seen is supposed to be on the bench of 3 for that. We had to go, all right, we see it, but does he see it? I don't know. So we have to go to him and say, hey, do you feel attached to this? This is where God has shown us that you are, but we want you to feel that call too. And so once he was there, then he became a part of that bench of 3 on the worship and intercession mountain. And so anyway, I hope that's helpful, but that's a little bit about kingdom order. I'm going to stop the share and yeah, anyway. I wanted to share that sort of thing because these blueprints are popping up everywhere, all over the earth. And so lots of people are starting to receive these blueprints, people who are walking in the heavenlies and people who are unknowingly walking in the heavenlies. So many of you have probably been having a strong relationship with the Lord where you're receiving maybe visions or prophecy or whatever for a long time, and have not understood that you were walking in the heavens, right? This is what happened to me anyway. A lot of people will deal with this. Well, we come across people who have this full blueprint that God has given them, and they have no idea that it was like an actual blueprint that came from heaven. They just know God has shown them this, whether it's in a vision or a dream or whatever. And so it's been really cool to see, because every time they have had 7 circles, 7 areas of influence, and it's always the same. And that's how you know for sure it's from heaven. And even one time, we met these people who had this blueprint, but it had 8 circles. And I was like, well, that's really weird, because, everything I've seen has always had 7. And I said, maybe you guys are, maybe this is a unique thing for you. Maybe we're not supposed to be attached to each other or something. And after talking with them through it, they had come up with an 8th one on their own. And so it was really interesting, because sometimes we just as humans tend to do that. We're like, well, this seems like something that goes really well with this, or, and that's kind of our human tendency. And so eventually they found that really God had given them 7 mountains, and they'd kind of made up their own thing on the 8th one. And because they didn't know anything about Kingdom Order anyway. And so anyway, this is something that's been really exciting to help people get their blueprints established, because a lot of times you might receive a blueprint and have no idea what to do with it from there, and just go, well, there's nobody here to do any of this stuff. How's that going to happen? But what God does, if you pray into it and you start engaging over the blueprint, he will show you who should be involved with it. And he might show you people you've never even met before. I mean, just like here, I was talking yesterday about Erin Michael. So she was part of one of my intro classes. No, I think the first or second one, I can't remember. And after getting to know her really well, I knew she was attached to the Sources Blueprint. Well, she's in Washington State, like totally, this is a long way in the United States from each other, okay? So, I don't know, 4 hours flying, I think. And, but somehow I'm like, I don't know, I think you're attached to it. And I said, hey, you feel like God's telling you to move here? And she said, actually, God did say that, but I didn't want to say anything because I thought that was too weird. And so anyway, God did that and moved her here to Kansas. And then I have someone else, his name is Greg, and he lives in Dallas. And he's not called to move here, but he's attached to this blueprint. And so he actually is part of this Resources Mountain, and he does all of our, not all, but a lot of our web design and stuff like that, and all of that programming. That's what he does from afar. And so anyway, you never know how you might be plugged in. You may not be a front face or anything, but you could be a big part of a blueprint, whether it's our blueprint or another. And what I like to remind people of is, never is God going to give a blueprint that is totally unique. And when I say that, I mean this: all blueprints overlap in some area. And God does this so there's unity in the body, because we're supposed to work together. We're not supposed to build our individual kingdoms. We're building the kingdom of heaven here. And so he's releasing to us this. And so somebody else might have a healing ministry like we do. May not even be the same kind of healing ministry, but they will overlap in this way. So we'll work together on healing stuff. Does that make sense? So everybody's blueprint will overlap with other blueprints. You may not even know who those people are yet, but God will bring them to you, I promise. We got our blueprint, thought we were alone in the world. We're just kind of like, this is weird, can't share anything like this with anyone. And then we saw Mike Parsons release a blueprint that was so much like ours. We were like, what? This is amazing. And so then we just started praying into it, and God showed us that we were supposed to be on a bench of 3. We didn't know what we were doing. We had nobody to teach us. And we just said, okay, God, here we are. We're going to present ourselves in the heavens as a bench of 3. Now, what do you want to do with this? And he just did all sorts of stuff and started teaching us how to govern things and what to do, taking us to these rooms we'd never been to, all these different things, showing us he established a literal bench in heaven to where we go and we meet at the bench in the heavenly realms and we govern over things, even if we're not together. And so it's been a real eye-opening and interesting experience. And we've done a lot of things. Even our bench, I know some of you are from South Africa. I can't remember who, but anyway, when we were governing one time, we just said, okay, God, what do you want to do with us? And he took us to the court of scribes, which was a weird thing for us to go to the court of scribes first. Usually we go to the court of scribes after something. But we were taken to the court of scribes, and then there were these people, these saints from South Africa, who brought this covenant that we were supposed to receive this covenant and basically commit to fulfilling this covenant. Well, we were like, we're not from South Africa. Why are you giving this to us? You know? And so anyway, when we went, we finally said, okay, we'll do this. We signed this covenant. Jesus signed this covenant. We went and released all sorts of stuff from heaven into the earth in the kingdom of God. And what happened was amazing. Many of you from South Africa know about the huge drought in Cape Town, right? Or I don't know, in that area. When this happened, we were led to do it out of a lot of things. There are a lot of things that happened that day, but we were led to go and just release all this over the land. And then all of a sudden we were in the midst of this huge downpour, thunder and lightning downpour, and it started to flood even. And anyway, all of this was an amazing experience. We were releasing light into the land. This blood was, it was a terrible, there's blood on the land, and there was cleansing that happened, and all of this releasing light into the darkness. And I went back and I messaged one of my friends from South Africa that I met on this class, and she goes, no way, right now. So she's in Cape Town, by the way. So she goes, no way, right now, people are outside in the rain taking pictures, and it's already starting to flood. And I was like, what? And so anyway, it's amazing what happened. So here we are, we're coming to South Africa, and where Audrey is, there's a bench of 3 that has been established over her town. And this is the same place that God has told us to go because of this covenant. And so we didn't know anything about a bench already being there and all of this. It's so cool. And so anyway, we're going to be working with them and helping them to steward this covenant and all of that. It's so exciting. So it's that overlap that's happening that we didn't even know that there was some sort of overlap in the blueprints until this happened. And so anyway, yes. All right. So Aaron Michael, go ahead. Unmute.
So I just wanted to say, you were talking about how you can be connected with a blueprint to people that, like, you have no idea who these people are and all these things. And I just wanted to, speak on that. I had, for the last 2 or so years, kind of been in isolation, but spending like so much time with the Lord and just engaging the heavenly realms. And it was kind of like I would have these like secret rendezvous with the Lord, because I was told I wasn't supposed to be doing it, and so I'm like, but I know I am, so I'm just gonna have a little secret rendezvous over here. And when the Lord told me that I was supposed to be leaving Washington, and had been talking to me about all these wells I had been digging and all this stuff I had been doing, I was like, then why are you having me leave? Was just trying to understand. I wasn't trying to argue. And he said, you have been digging wells in the spirit. And he said, just because in the natural your location was in Washington doesn't mean that's where these wells that you've been digging have been dug. And he was telling me that when I go out and connect with the people I'm supposed to be connecting with, wells that I have been digging for the last 2 years that have a lid on them will not be able to be, the lid won't be able to be lifted unless I go and step in and lift that lid. And I'm like, oh, so it's kind of a big deal. And then found out I was connected with these guys here in Wichita, and the Lord was like, and that's where you're going, so that's good. And then I find out I'm connected with people all over the world in the craziest way, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So yeah, like if you're doing things in the heavenly realms, if you're engaging in the spirit, a lot of the stuff that you're doing might be happening in the natural where you are currently, but is also happening all over the world. Like you're affecting things everywhere. So you are going to be connected with people and places everywhere. So if you are in isolation, or you do feel like you're hidden or you're in a box or whatever, get ready for him to just shatter that box. Because yeah, when you're pressing in, he'll reveal those things to you, and just staying in obedience and connecting with the folks. And yeah. Sorry.
Yay, that's good. It's true. And the Lord was showing me about, when we had this happen with South Africa, we were quite confused about why we from the United States are receiving something for South Africa, because that's generally what we receive is for here. That's something that he's showing us what we should be doing here, and for us to be given something for a land that we hadn't even stepped foot on was strange. But it made sense eventually because God had told us to go there already. He had been preparing us before, showing us that we would go there. I think I told many of you this, that God told me that I would be going to South Africa before I ever knew a soul in South Africa. And that confused me, but I trusted him. And I just was like, well, I don't understand this, but I'll do whatever you say. And then eventually, I would meet somebody. And then really Audrey, who's on here, she's the one who connected everything for me. And it was such a big, Audrey, you probably don't even know what you did for me, but our meeting really just opened things up where the Lord showed me why and showed me how and showed me it was possible that he would connect me with the perfect people. And not that you're perfect, but you're perfect for me. Okay. So anyway, it was amazing what God showed me through that. And just to see now, in this intro class, if you guys go look on our little Facebook page, we have 65 people from South Africa enrolled on that page. That's crazy. I didn't know anybody from there. A year ago, I knew nobody. That's insane. And so God just can open things up and do something completely different than you ever know. And he's shown me something special for that land, by the way, that his glory is going to pour forth from that place into the rest of the world. And so it's a very special land that y'all have. So just putting that out there. Anyway, so that's kingdom order that I was talking about. I'm sure not everybody cares about South Africa, but we do. Our hearts are attached now. So anyway, I will say this. I will be talking about time, but I want to give you guys an opportunity. If anybody has a question specifically about kingdom order, please go ahead and let me know the question. And then after that, we'll talk about time.
So someone was saying that they really, what did they say? It said they really want to know what's on their blueprint. So can you, I guess, elaborate on how one would press in to receive that?
Sure. Well, there are a few different places that you can receive a blueprint. First of all, you could just receive it on your own mountain. And blueprints pretty much always come in scrolls. So you'll receive it on a scroll. When you receive this blueprint, you might get visions and stuff that are attached to it. Oh, look, you're getting whacked too. I see it. Anyway, you can receive this in the scroll room. So if you ask Jesus to take you to the scroll room to receive your blueprint, that's a place that often people receive blueprints. Some people receive blueprints in the court of war, the court of strategies. And so depending on what the blueprint is for, you can receive it there. I have also released blueprints into the Court of Kings. And so if you are led to do legislation, you might receive a blueprint there in the Court of Kings as well. So anyway, there are lots of different places that you could receive it, but it's just asking the Lord, for it if you're ready. And he will probably tell you if you're ready or not. So, and he might reveal to you the entire thing. He most likely will reveal to you parts of it. And then you'll have to go back and see more of it. You might also have to be connected with someone else who receives the same blueprint to get the other parts of the blueprint. So for us, my sister was the one who received the blueprint for the source originally. I knew I was attached to it. I started getting visions and being taken to these different places that gave clarity on the blueprint. But we didn't know that someone else that we were supposed to be governing with eventually. First of all, we received it before we understood anything about kingdom order. And then God started revealing all the stuff about kingdom order. We then met these different people who we started engaging heaven with. And this other lady had received the exact same blueprint, but we didn't know it. And so we were engaging with them, growing every week with them. And then finally, she showed us this blueprint that she had, and it was the same blueprint that Kim had been given. And so we knew that we were connected and that we were supposed to establish this blueprint together. And so anyway, it's amazing what God does. I mean, he will introduce you to people that have your blueprint. And so it can be a very exciting time. It can also be quite kind of freaky, you know, when you go, what? I received this too. So I saw that Gloria said, do you ask God for a blueprint or do you have to go to a court to get one? I would just ask Jesus to take you to the place you need to go to get one, or just to give it to you. I don't know how you'll receive it. Everybody receives it differently. So it's kind of hard to say overall how that happens. Tom said, I received scrolls and a few visions before, but I'm not sure what did those scrolls include. It's about 6 years ago. How would you approach finding out content in scrolls received? First of all, I would just ask, I would ask for Jesus to reveal that to you. Or you can also, if you don't see very well or anything like that in the heavenlies, you can ask an angel to read it to you. I've had people do that before. You can ask to have a dream about it, but you can go back anytime, even though it was 6 years ago here. We'll talk about this with time, but you're outside of time when you're in the heavenly realms. And so, you know, it doesn't matter. You can just go back like it was this morning. So just ask him to take you back to that and show you the scrolls. So yeah, and then I see Galaxy J5, whomever you are, you have your hand raised, so why don't you unmute yourself?
Hi, Stephanie. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Oh, it's Stephanie. Hi.
Hi. I just wanted to testify something because I had this vision for Corfu, you know, for a long time. Like, and I knew which people should come there. God has told me, like, why they should come there and who should come there. And now they came, like, two people one called me this morning and she said to me, God told me to come with you to Corfu.
Hey.
And then another person who is also like, who should come, she said, and I want him to come with me. So it's happening by itself. Like, I'm just here and God is getting, like, talking to them.
That is awesome.
Because nobody listened to me before. Like, I have this vision, but nobody listens to you. And you feel like you're alone with it. And then suddenly, and then also I have a friend who is, she's actually from South Africa, but she's from London. And she's also coming, and she's very powerful in breaking all this kind of bad stuff. So, oops. Yusuf. My cat was making strange noises. So she said she's coming also, like, for 2 weeks. So like and I had this vision last year when I was in Corfu that there were people coming from different countries, and I was there, and then I was just going to the airport to pick up people. And then it's gonna be it's testimony that something's happening.
I know, I love it. That's so cool. It's funny when God tells you something, especially say a year out, just like that. And he shows you this stuff and you're like, how is this going to happen? Nobody cares about what I'm saying. And then it's boom, boom, boom. It's so cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, I can see that. It's just, I'm just laying here doing nothing and I'm just like at home. And then it just like happens. He talks to them and they call me. And it gave me some hope. Like, okay, there's hope. Yeah, things are better.
That's awesome. Cool. Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay. Yeah, we do.
By the way, you look great today. I have to tell you that.
Thank you. Mm.
Awesome. Okay, I'm missing. Okay, Aaron, Michael, you've been paying attention to the stuff.
So Tracy said, she said, Aaron Michael, I had a giggle when you spoke about being in isolation. I have been in isolation for almost 5 years now. Five years now. And Father got me to sell my house in Cape Town and move to Port Alfred, Eastern Cape, 4 months ago. I hadn't even heard of Port Alfred prior to this. And I have no idea why I'm here. Could this be part of my blueprint?
Yes, ma'am. It could be part of your blueprint, or it could be a blueprint you're attached to. So who knows? I mean, I would say for sure God has a plan for you there and is probably going to connect you to the perfect people while you're there. Be open to leaving your house. I don't know if you're that kind of person or not, but just make sure that you are making yourself available to the Lord. And, for me, I was going to a church. Actually, the Source used to be a church, not just a ministry, until God gave us this blueprint. Totally transformed everything we do. But I was going to the Source when it was a church, and it was kind of what I would say old wineskins. You know what I'm saying? And it was really frustrating to me when God said I needed to keep going there. I did not want to. I did not connect with how they were connecting with the Lord, all of that, because God totally blew everything open for me in the heavenly realms. And it was really frustrating for me to keep going, but I was being obedient. And all I did is say, God, you've got to do something because I can't keep doing this. And then all of a sudden, it just blew open the doors and everything's totally different now. And so even it's a very short time. It was probably, I don't know, a year and a half ago that things totally transformed. And it's just gotten better every week. So, I mean, even I'll be a little frustrated one week, the next week, something else is awesome. And it just, God keeps rolling different stuff in. And so I never imagined that this would be totally transformed and be used for God's glory in this way. And so you may be in this place that maybe nobody even engages in heaven there yet. It could be you're the first one. And that may be so that more people will learn. Or, there's someone who was here in Wichita. She thought she was totally alone engaging in heaven. She was listening to some different people like Nancy Cohen. I don't know if you guys know her, but anyway, I didn't know, we didn't know that, but she one day, God told her to come and visit the Source. Well, at this time, it was the very first time when she came, we were just having a meeting, not like even a normal service. And this meeting was releasing the blueprint to everybody. And she saw the blueprint and she's like, wow, this healing ministry, I'm really attached to this. This is, are you saying you're welcoming anyone who could do ministry to do this stuff? And we're like, yeah. And she's like, you mean you don't have to be like a member of the church for 6 years or something? We're like, no, it's just if God's telling you to do it, And so part of what we're doing is equipping and sending. That's what we do. And so anyway, she knew she was attached to the healing ministries part. She had no idea we were doing Engaging Heaven anything. And I decided to meet with her, and I'm like, well, now I'm going to have to explain this whole Engaging Heaven thing because I can't tell her how I do bloodline cleansing without it, right? And so I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to talk to this lady about all of the heaven. Well, heaven is for now, not just for later, and all of this. And she starts going, who are you listening to? Are you listening to Ian Clayton, Justin Abraham, Nancy Cohen? I'm like, how do you know those people? And she was like, oh my goodness, I thought I was all alone in Wichita. I almost moved down to Texas just to be around people who I could be like. And all of a sudden she's connected, and now she's one of them going to South Africa with us. And so anyway, it's just amazing what God does to bring people together who you think you're alone. You might not be the only person there who's engaging. There might be someone who is stuck in their closet engaging and nobody else is doing it, And so anyway, it's exciting to see what will happen. This will be really cool to see how God breaks things open for you. Okay, Aaron Michael, I see you raised your hand. I don't know why you're not raised. Oh, you don't know how. Okay. All right, unmute yourself, will you?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, going along with what you were saying, in my last 2 years where I was like in isolation and all this stuff, I was dealing with a lot of stuff, and it was really, really bad, like in the atmosphere around me, in my home, in the church environment I was going to, all of these things. It was really difficult. And I kept saying, like, Lord, I don't know why I'm still here. I don't know why you still, like, what is happening? Why do I still need to do this? And I would say things like, can I leave? And what he would say to me every time was, you are free to do what you want, but I don't change my mind. And he kept saying that to me every time. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. And I realized that it was an obedience thing. There was a reason why I was there. And it wasn't, and I realized that if it is for kingdom reasons, if there are things that the Lord is doing, am I willing to like press in and stay in a situation that I don't understand when I know very clearly that it is his will? And you can ask my mom and like all sorts of people. People are like, why are you still there? Like these situations are awful and all of this stuff. Like, can you please leave? Like, I'm worried about you. And I'm like, I know it doesn't make sense, but I know this is what the Lord is having me do right now. And because I knew like clearly that it was him because of time, spent with him, I stayed and I pressed in and I pressed in. And then one day he goes, okay, now you can go. And I was like, what? Like, I hit the ground running, and people didn't understand and thought that I was leaving for one reason or another. And it's like, no, I'm leaving because he told me to. I was here because he told me to. And now I'm leaving because he told me to, and it's like, just as long as you're walking in that obedience, he'll bless the time and he'll bless your next steps. And as long as you're in him, even if it seems like, what the heck, like, even if it seems sucky, if you think about it in scripture, immediately after Jesus was baptized and the Spirit of God ascended on him like a dove, and the Father said, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased, what happened next? He was led into the wilderness by who? The Spirit of God. Why? To be tempted by the enemy, as like a training thing. It wasn't because he was awful or he did something bad. It was because that's where he was supposed to be to get prepared for his next steps. So sometimes things seem like, what is happening? And people are like, what did I do wrong? I'm in isolation or, whatever, or, I'm in this wilderness season. It's like, yeah, because you're like right on the like training ground where he's getting ready to like skyrocket you somewhere else that you can't even imagine yet. So yeah, that's all. Sorry.
Good. It's good. So how about we talk about time? Whoa. Oh, Betty says, so true and so glad you listened to the Father. We don't always understand his timing, but he is always right on. So true. Good mama. She is. That's Erin.
Love you, mommy.
Yeah. So anyway, time. I do really love talking about time. And the reason I love it is because God has shifted a lot of how I function through the realization that we can step outside of time and be governing time, redeeming the time, like the Bible says. God would not tell us to redeem the time in the Bible if we weren't supposed to. And so let's just know that if he says that we're supposed to do it, we should seek that. And so I'll kind of tell you about my journey in it. So I had these experiences in my walk with the Lord that I was doing things in time that were impossible and very sci-fi-ish. And I did not want to tell anybody that that's what it was. And so I would just tell the church that it was a vision. And so this I wasn't really lying because it was kind of a vision, but the truth is I was there in these different times. And I knew nobody would understand if I said, hey, God took me to another time and I was time traveling. That just sounds crazy. And so I didn't ever say that, but that's the reality of what was happening to me. And so he would take me into these different times, and I didn't understand it. It wasn't something I asked for him to do. It just happened. And he would take me into the past. He would take me into the future, not just in my lifetime, in different generations. And it was bizarre but wonderful. When he would do this, he would teach me things, and he would show me things that were supposed to be and how we were supposed to relate. And so when this happened, wake up. Anyway, when this happened, I kind of kept things to myself, and then I heard Mike Parsons. He came for this little conference here. I'll tell you, I talk about it all the time because he blew my mind with stuff when he did. And so he came here to this little conference and was talking about going into different times on the timeline and all of that, engaging the timeline, redeeming the time, doing these things. And I was like, I am not crazy. I am here. I am not alone. This is a real thing. And that was so refreshing to me. But I still didn't know what to do with it at that point. I just was encouraged. And then I was at a little ecclesia meeting where we were engaging in heaven together, talking about stuff. And God had told me at that time, quit listening to these different teachers. So when I first started engaging in heaven, I just started consuming anybody who was talking about it. I would listen to them all the time and just try to get everything I could. And God said, quit doing this. Don't listen to anybody. I want to teach you. And so when this happened, I was like, oh, okay. And so he started teaching me a bunch of stuff, but I couldn't listen to anybody else. And I thought that would last forever. But thankfully, he let me start listening to people after about 6 months when that idol of man was broken off. I didn't even know I had an idol of man, by the way. But anyway, I did. And I was in this ecclesia meeting, and everybody was talking about Justin Abraham, who I had never listened to because God told me I couldn't listen to people. And so they're talking about rich time and poor time. I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, oh, Justin Abraham talks about this, and it's about doing time miracles. Rich time is the time miracles. Poor time is when time's working against you. And we all know that if we don't govern time, time will govern us. Everybody has been in that situation where time is really governing you. And so anyway, they're talking about these, giggling about it, and then the leader of the group says, okay, this week we're all going to work on our time miracles. And they were just laughing and kind of pretending about it. And I took it as a challenge. And so I'm like, I'm doing that. And so that week, I didn't intentionally go about doing it, but that week I was at my dad's house across town, and I had all my big water bottles with me because I have these 5-gallon water bottles that I get filled up at Whole Foods. And it was 8:55, and Whole Foods closes at 9. I was across town from Whole Foods, and immediately I get in the car. I'm like, dang it, I missed my time. I'm not going to be able to make it to Whole Foods. And then it just hit me. No, you need to do this time miracle. And so I'm like, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I just said, I'm driving. And I said, okay, Jesus, you got to show me what to do because I have no idea what to do. And he showed me this timeline, and it's like a substance. And it's not what I thought it would be. It was a substance. And he said, okay, now take this time and this time, and then put them together. Oh, I don't remember if he even said put them together, stretch out. One of these things. I can't even remember at the time. But he told me to do this. Pretty sure it was put it together. And anyway, so I did that. Didn't know what I was doing, but I just trusted him that somehow this would make me arrive there. Okay. So I decided I'm not going to speed. I'm going to do everything right, and I'm not going to look at the clock, because if I look at the clock, I know I'm not going to have faith for it. And so for me, I was like, I know that faith is the currency of heaven. I got to have faith for it to happen. And so I just trusted him, and I'm like, all right, I'm just going to drive, see what happens. We get there, and I get there with 3 minutes to spare. That means a 20-minute drive took 2 minutes. which doesn't make sense. I couldn't do that if I was even speeding, going twice the speed. But it was amazing. So all I did is fill up my water. It wasn't some miracle that happened while I was at Whole Foods. The miracle was the time miracle. And so anyway, that opened up my mind to things of, oh, I can govern time in a different way. And everyone governs time differently. So not everyone, but a lot of people govern time differently. My son, he governs time, but he doesn't engage the timeline to do it. He just believes for it. That's all he does. And so he will govern time every time. He's better than me, okay? I'm one who will get stressed out. Many of you have heard me. This is how I am with my kids. I'm like, you guys get in the car right now. We're going to be late. This is how I am because I'm always worried about being late. Typical American. And so anyway, my son is like, no, we're not going to be late. Don't say that. You're speaking death. We're going to be on time. And so he just believes for it, and it happens every time. And he has a lot more faith than I do at sometimes. But anyway, I was listening to Grant Mahoney one time, and he was talking about how he goes through the future gate to get to the future. Me, I engage the timeline in the future. So that's not something I do, and it's just because that's how God has led me. Everybody, just do whatever Jesus leads you to do, even if it's different from what someone else talks about, because that's going to be the way that you function. We're all meant to function differently in the heavenlies. And so that's one of the most important things I think I've learned is that I don't need to act like Stephanie. We have different roles in the kingdom. And so what he does with her is going to be totally different than what he does with me, which is then going to be totally different than how Aaron Michael works. And so I have to be careful to not compare myself to other people or say, well, Aaron Michael does this, so I'm going to do that. It's not always like that. And so you can get an idea, just like for me going, I never heard of the rich time thing. I think that's for me. It was for me in a different way than other people. So, it's okay to have a difference. But anyway, there are things that can happen when we engage time. I have 1,000 stories I could tell about engaging the timeline and going into the future and doing different things. And they have all been extremely powerful experiences, ones that will blow you away. I mean, when we start walking in these things, we will understand that we truly are outside of the physical. Our body is here in the physical for sure, but we can step outside. And if you think about this, everybody says God is outside of time. This is true. We have to recognize that as a spirit, we are outside of time as well. And so when we are in heaven, we're in a different time. I was talking to someone today about the benching thing. So for instance, we have a bench of 3. When we meet in heaven, we aren't all going, okay, everybody, at 8:15, let's all go together and meet there. That's not how it works. I go in the morning, Kim goes in the night, somebody else goes in the next morning, and we're all there at the same time in the heavenly realms because we're outside of the time of earth. If you think that the time of heaven would be the same as earth, it doesn't even make sense because obviously it's not governed by the sun and the moon, right? It's governed by the Lord. So it's outside of that time. Our timeline on the earth is an actual substance that can be moved, you can go and engage these 2 different times. You can go and be in 2 different places at the same time, which is more of a space miracle, if you will, but you can do that by engaging the timeline. There are things that we have limited ourselves by our experience here on the earth. And when we limit ourselves in this way, we are not going to see the fullness of what God wants for us. We have to open our hearts and our minds to let the Spirit lead us in the heavens to do things differently. I mean, yesterday I was talking with somebody who kept saying, well, I just don't understand. Was he made it this time, or was he before the earth was created? And I'm just like, you're not understanding time, okay? He can be made in heaven. God is and always was, okay? So if he is and always was, and Jesus came from him, he doesn't have to have a time on the earth. He's only inserted into the timeline. And so that's how it is with all of us. We're inserted into the timeline. We need to make sure that we don't limit ourselves to what we experience on this earth, because this earth is this big compared to everything that exists in all of heaven and all of the cosmos. And so anyway, I just wanted to put that out there, that there is more that we can do in the earth through engaging the Spirit. And I mean, we could go into 1,000 different ways that God can do miracles. But let's just remember, there are people in the Bible who have engaged time, and they have ended up in different timeline, in a different part of the timeline in the Bible. You guys remember when there were saints who showed up at Jesus' transfiguration, right? These saints, I believe they really were there. I don't think that it was some like, well, they just said that they were there and they were some sort of figment of their imagination. I don't believe that. I believe they were really there. And if that's true, then they were in two different times. And there's a reason probably that they were in two different times. They represented something very special that needed to happen at that point in the timeline. And so what God can do is move us in different places. I mean, if we try to go and move ourselves, it's probably not going to happen the same way as if Jesus takes us in his will and moves us where we're supposed to go. And so let's just know that if you are doing something, you need to be led by Jesus to do it. We don't want to just go, well, I think it would be really handy. I mean, like with me, with Whole Foods, I wouldn't have even done that if I didn't feel a leading in my spirit to do it, because there's no way I would even know how. Jesus had to do it for me. I mean, he's the one who's teaching me how things work. And he's the one who teaches all of us how things work. He is our rabbi. He's the one who's supposed to teach us. And it's not just supposed to be that we learn from Greg down the road or we learn from Christine online. We're supposed to be learning from our rabbi, Jesus. And so let's just all remember that it's not about following a person. It's not about doing what each other do. It's about following Jesus and letting him show you who you are and how you're supposed to function. So anyway, okay, that was long-winded. I'm sorry. If you want more examples of things, let me know. I know, oh, people, oh, goodness gracious. I'm sorry. I have missed a lot of things. All right. All right. Someone asked privately, I'm not going to say who it is, but someone asked privately for a donation link for this ministry. Let me just send it to you right quick. I'm going to put it in the chat box, so if you want to. No one ever feel compelled to give, only trade into things when God is just putting it on your heart to trade in. And so if he is, absolutely, we will accept that, but just know, never do we require anything like that. So there you go. Okay. You can just go right there to give. And then, all right, let's see. Okay, Aaron, Mike, you've been paying attention to the chat box by chance? Yes? Okay, can you say some stuff for me about what's been happening? Oh, you're muted still. Okay.
So there were a few things. Let me scroll up so I can get to them in order. Connie was asked, well, I think you already covered this, but she was saying, I have not tried going into the future. Are there any examples of that? And I think what you were saying about the saints showing up on the Mount of Transfiguration speaks to that. But is there anything else you want to share?
Sure. Here's something. I shared this yesterday. And so if you were on the class yesterday, this is your fault for showing up twice. No, but anyway, I'll share what I shared yesterday. There was a time when I was listening to a message from Grant Mahoney. I say a message. He was talking somewhere, and I don't know if you've listened to him, but it was the first time I'd ever heard him speak. And my friend said, hey, you got to listen to him. He has this really cool story about, basically it was about transrelocation and how he was engaging with these saints and stuff. And so anyway, so I'm like, all right, I'll go listen to that, see what's up. And so I listened to it. And actually what I got out of it, though that was cool, was not anything to do with that. It was this that had to do with engaging the future. And so he was talking about how he engages this future gate. And what he was saying was, he gave this example of how he needed to sell this car really bad. And so he had tried selling his car, and he couldn't sell this car. So he went and engaged the future gate, where he went through this gate and he saw himself on his computer, sitting down at the computer, putting up this post for the exact amount that the car was worth, and then it sold within like 5 minutes or something. So then after doing that, he then kind of came back, you know what I'm talking about, like really focused back in the earth. And then he went over to his computer and did exactly what he saw happen, and it sold immediately. And he was talking about this, and for some reason, the Spirit rose up in me at that point and was like, this is for you. And so I'm like, okay, but I didn't have anything at that point. And later that week, I was dealing with, I'd been dealing for a long time with the poverty spirit. Do you know what I'm talking about? This poverty mindset of always thinking that you're not going to have enough. This has been a problem for me most of my life, but I would say generally in my marriage, it has been a real problem for me. And I would start thinking, I'm not going to have enough food. I'm not going to have enough money. I'm not going to have enough gas. I'm not going to have enough of everything. And this is constantly in my head. We get low on something and I think, I'm not going to have enough of this. What am I going to do? I need to do something because I'm not going to have enough. And this is a non-reliance on God, okay? Just to be clear, this is not from the Lord, but this is what I was dealing with. And there's this nutritional drink that I take that is, God gave me to really change my health. And it has completely transformed my health. But he's given this to me, and this stuff is like liquid gold to me. And I was running low on this stuff called Zeal, okay? So I'm running low on my canister, so I'm like, well, maybe I'll just take half a scoop, and I'm trying to portion it out so I'll have enough. And I had this little conference, this business conference that I went to that had to do with Zeal. And at this conference, this is a Christian company, so they were dealing with bad mindsets. And one of the things that we were doing is trading in a bad mindset that we had for a mindset that God wanted us to have. And so everybody was dealing with their own junk, but basically we had to come up with something and then step over the line to trade it in for a new mindset. And so anyway, as we were going through this, God just showed me I was having this I won't have enough mindset. And he wanted me to trade it in for I will have more than enough. And so I was like, okay. So I traded in for I will have more than enough. Well, nobody there, at least that I knew of, was engaging in heaven or anything. But I'm like, I better deal with this in the courts. So I sat down in my chair and I did a quick court case repenting of this and, trading it in for I will have more than enough. And when this happened, I saw on the stage, they were doing these raffles. And my friend, basically they were doing these raffles to help cover the cost of the room rental. And my friend was the one in charge of it. So I bought extra raffle tickets just to help her out to make sure that the room was covered. And I saw that one of the things they were raffling off was this big kit that had a lot of Zeal in it. And I was like, man, God, I need that kit. I know that you can provide that for me. And he immediately showed me that I needed to go and engage the future to do this. But what happened was different. I thought I would go through a gate like Grant Mahoney, and instead he took me to the timeline. And so we went to the timeline. I went into the future, and I saw that they pulled out my number for this kit, and that my son, who was with me, was called up to go get this kit. So I was like, okay. I focus back in the natural, and they're getting ready to do this drawing. And so I'm like, well, I'll just see how this works. This is me like testing the Lord for some reason, which is not a smart thing to do. But I was like, okay, let's see if this really is a thing. And so as they were doing it, at first they were raffling off other things. So they had a single bottle of Zeal the first time. It's just a little one thing, you know. And they called my number. And so I'm like, well, that's good. At least I want something. Okay, cool. And so Soren went up to get the Zeal and then brought it back. And then the next one was for 2 little bottles of Zeal. And so they pulled my number again. And I'm like, okay, well, cool, more. That's awesome. And so he brought it back, and then they were raffling off this magazine, and they pulled my number again. And I'm like, okay, God, I do not need another one of these magazines. This is not important to me. And so the next time they were raffling off the magazine, and they did not pull my number. And so I was like, okay, good. But the next one was this big kit that I knew, like, I saw and I really wanted. I'm like, okay, this is the real deal. Let's see what happens. No joke, they pulled my number yet again. And so I'm sure everybody thought it was rigged because this was not my plan or anything. In fact, it was a bit embarrassing to win like most of these things. At the same time, right when that happened, God reminded me and he said, I told you more than enough. And I was like, you're right. You're right, God. And it was such a blessing to me. And I know this is not to say, hey, you need to use God for your own benefit or anything like that. This was something I was led to do. And it was something that really encouraged my faith. That whole next week, God kept proving himself with more than enough for me. And it had nothing to do with the future. It was really just over and over. We were about out of food, and somebody showed up at my door they didn't even know. Like, nobody asked. I'm a little prideful at times, and I did not tell anybody that I was almost out of food. And this lady showed up with tons of groceries. My whole kitchen was literally overflowing, and I could not hold all of the groceries in my kitchen. And as my husband's putting this stuff away in the refrigerator, he just said, more than enough, Chris. And I'm like, yeah, more than enough, and it was so encouraging. And this kept happening. And so anyway, God will always supply our needs. He will always show us new and weird ways of doing things, but it's always going to be to increase our faith. And it will always be to help us really grow in our relationship and our walk with him. And so, I'm not saying I go and ask God for $1 million and, try to see it on the time. It's not like that. I only see on the timeline what he shows me. I don't make something up in the future to have happen. It doesn't work like that. And so anyway, I just want to be clear. But anyway, there you go, Connie. Okay, Aaron Michael.
So then Tom says, so is it possible to see vision for the future disaster and focus in it and pray and even to get God to help in changing it? And it says all the time in spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this has happened multiple times to me where he's shown me disaster kind of stuff that was supposed to happen. And I just called in everybody I knew to start praying over it and to engage in that. And it never happened. Many people would say, well, you just heard wrong. But I know for sure, like, that's what I heard, and it didn't happen. And it was because we were interceding. I mean, the same can be said for something that even God doesn't reveal to you in the future, but something that a weatherman reveals to you. You can go and change things just by your own engaging that and praying over it. And so, but he often will show us the future so that we will have a part in it, good or bad. And so that for me has been my experience. He'll show me things that are going to happen in the future. And it's not just because he wants to scare me. It's because he wants me to have a part in that and governing that and saying, here's what the enemy's up to. Here, go ahead and go for this. And so that's what he does a lot to me. I've seen things that are to happen in the future, and I am excited to be a part of turning that stuff around. In fact, somebody sent me this video last night that was really crazy, but I really do believe it was true of what should happen. Okay, when I say should happen, I mean that's what the enemy has planned to happen. But I know that he has led me to already start working on these things. That's how I believe it's true, is because he's had me start working on these things before I knew it was a thing in the earth. And so I know that he has a plan for us to start governing these things, to start shutting down the enemy, to start taking back these gates for the Lord, to start releasing light into the earth, to start changing things, healing people, all of that. So anyway, yes, I get very passionate about that because he likes to heal. He likes to bring restoration. He likes to surprise people with his grace. And so I really believe God will change anything. If he shows it to you, it's so you will engage it. Yes, Aaron Michael, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, so good. I was just going to piggyback off of that and say that there are times that he will show us stuff because, you know, a situation with me, like, you know, this past couple of years that I've been talking about, and I had asked the Lord, like, why? What was the purpose of all that? You know, and after I came out of it, he showed me what was coming to, like, going to be happening in this place. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I said to him, Lord, who am I supposed to be arcing with to pray about these things? And what he said to me very clearly, because I'm like, I know these different intercessors and blah, 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 who am I supposed to be connecting with and arcing with? And he said, you're supposed to be arcing with me and I will handle it. And I was like, okay, because I'm like, these things can't happen. Like, this is awful. And at first when he said, first, you're not supposed to be arcing with, you know, any of those intercessors. And I freaked out. I'm like, why would you show me this, Lord? Why are you showing me these horrible things? He was like, no, because you're supposed to be arcing with me. And I was like, wow. And so I pressed in and was, you know, praying and just like giving it over to the Lord and like expressing my heart and just like, Lord, you know, come in and shift things. And then it seemed like things were still falling apart and there was all this craziness happening. And I'm like, oh no. And my first thought was, what have I done? I didn't pray hard enough about it or whatever, you know. And the Lord, he's so funny with me. He kind of like chuckled and he was explaining to me, he was like, honey, no, I told you because you were supposed to press in and arc with me. This is what's happening now. But those prayers that you have been praying are for the healing and protection of people involved in all of it, like the children involved in it and the things that are going to come out of it, so that none of this is happening in vain, so that there is restoration and the things are built back up and all of this stuff. So sometimes even when we're pressing in and praying for things, we're like, wait a minute, what's happening isn't what I think should be happening. But since when is it supposed to be what we think should be happening? You know, it should be like higher level. And sometimes if it doesn't make sense, like that's a good thing because that means it's him. And then also I wanted to share, I heard one time at an event that I went to, Ian Clayton was talking about taking authority over weather and stuff like that, like what Christine was talking about. And even Kim, Christine's sister, was telling me a testimony about a time that she did that. And like when the Lord calls you and says like, yes, do these things, it's so, you know, important to step into it. And also, like Christine's always saying, make sure you're following the leading of the Holy Spirit in it. Because if a storm seems horrible and awful and you're like, oh my gosh, it's going to bring destruction, but the Lord is not saying to shift it, there's a reason for it. Because what if it has something to do with people getting rain somewhere that haven't had rain? There's no way for rain to hit these high points that have been in drought if it's not for this thing that's going to happen, you know. And if it does come and you're like, no, shift, then these people who were relying on that rain and who had actually been praying for rain now are not going to receive, you know, the rain that they needed, because we are powerful and we do have the ability to shift things. But it's important to make sure, like Christine is always saying, that you're following the leading of the Lord. And if he's not saying to do that, you know, not to just be like, I will control the weather, you know, like if he tells you to, or if you feel like you should and you check in with him and he's like, do it, then yeah. But if you check in with him and he's like, nah, chill, like this needs to happen, don't be like, well, actually, Lord, I have a wedding to go to that day, you know, like.
Yeah, I think that's good. I have unknowingly tried to do that before and really messed with the wrong territorial spirits where I didn't have authority. And so I didn't really understand all the, well, I still probably don't understand all there is to know about all that, but I at least am learning that there are certain places that you don't have authority, and you're only given the authority by the Lord. And so I guess I just kind of thought, well, he gave me the authority here, so I must have it everywhere. And so anyway, that's not always the truth. So I would just say, make sure you are walking in what he's wanting you to, because I mean, that seemed, when you're talking about that, it seems like, well, who would do that? Well, I would do that apparently, because I did. I was like, we need to get through this storm to get to this place. And so I'm like trying to move it out of the way. And the Lord, I mean, that was not a smart thing to do. I had a lot of backlash from the enemy because of that. And so anyway, yeah, be mindful of these things and be careful, but at the same time, just do what he's leading you to do, not more. So I also saw Connie said, one time God led me to a past memory while engaging heaven for the purpose of healing. And I'll tell you, that was one of my most powerful times when that happened to me. I took a couple people who had DID, or it's like a mental disorder. I don't know if disorder is what you call it, whatever. Anyway, mental illness. We were going to this mental illness, I don't know what conference. It was at a church, and it was basically about how to step through that. And so they wanted to go, and I took them. I was ministering to both of them, and I thought I was going for them. You know how it is. And so, but when we were there was this prayer person who came and led a bunch of prayer. And one of the things he did is he told us that we're going to go back to this traumatic time in our life, whatever that might be for you. It could be something you did or something that happened to you or whatever. And that we're going to focus there and ask Jesus to take us back to that time, and to then ask him where he was in that situation, to show us where he was. And when that happened to me, I don't remember a lot of trauma, and I'm sure I've had trauma, but I'm not haunted by a bunch of trauma like a lot of people. But I was haunted by my own sin. Okay, so there was this time, I shared this yesterday. It's hard for me to share this, to be this vulnerable, but I feel like it's helpful. So I hope you guys forgive me for these things. It's something that I know the Lord has forgiven me for, but there was a time where my girls, they're little, they were fighting real bad, like siblings do. But they were just fighting and fighting and fighting. And I was getting irritated and more irritated, and I just blew up at them, and I said some things that no one should say to their children, and I called them things that were not true. And as soon as it came out of my mouth, I hated myself. Like, it was immediately, I said, I'm so sorry, that's not true. And I started crying, and I just hated that I did that, because I knew that by speaking that death over them, that they could carry that for their whole life, And so here I am, I'm going, I have just ruined my girls with one moment, and it was so hard. And I had repented to the Lord, but I just kept carrying this. Even though I know I'm forgiven, I didn't want their lives to be screwed up because they're mom, and I kept carrying that. And so at that little mental health day, I decided I was going to deal with this, and I would go back and see if Jesus would show me where he was. And so I asked him to take me back. He took me back to that situation, and he showed me that he was covering their ears. And it was transformational for me, because I realized that even though I could sin so horribly, he could still protect them. And today, my girls don't even remember it at all. And it's shocking to me. You know, it shouldn't be, but it's shocking to me that God really can do that. He can redeem these things for us. He can show up when we're not okay. And he can do this in ways that when people sin against you, and do it when you sin against somebody else. And so anyway, there's a lot that is to be said for engaging the time and redeeming the time. And God is the one who redeems. He does it through us, but he redeems. He's the one. And so, anyway, yes, he is the loving Father. Okay, what more, Aaron Michael?
So one more just came in and said, have you ever gone while praying like empty or dry in spirit, that prayer and later come out, prayed for you, and that prayer became live instead of being dry again, and then you could see things you prayed some years ago start to happen in spirit? After 6 months you might be able to see it happening in real life.
Let me think about this for a second. Well, I'll tell you this. There was a time when I went through a really severe amount of pain. I was in physical pain. I was in really severe physical pain for years, and it was the darkest time of my life. I kept escaping into the spirit anytime I could, but it was one that was really hard to walk through. And I had lots of people lay hands on me to pray. And every time I would feel like God was doing something, and then I would be the same. And I really had faith for healing. I had great faith for healing. I'd seen lots of people healed through me laying hands on them, but never was I healed for that. And then there came a time when I told you about that stuff that is like liquid gold to me. That was introduced to me by a friend. I prayed about it before taking that stuff. And God told me that my story would change thousands of people's lives. And I didn't know how that would happen because I didn't have a story at that point. But he started changing me, and he started healing me through that. And what has happened since then has been so powerful to see God transform. I mean, people come to the Lord through this. People receive healing and just all have a new life, all of that. And I never saw the fullness of what God was going to do. I believed him for it. I did get that revitalized thing in my spirit, you know, where you feel like, no, I can't do it anymore. And then you feel like he's doing something and you don't see the fruit. Sometimes it doesn't happen like we think. Sometimes he doesn't always do it in a supernatural way. Sometimes he does it in a different way. But we just have to trust him to be true to what he says. And so, you know, why can pray go dry? What do you mean by that? Can you rephrase that? You can speak out loud. Unmute.
Dry in a way that normally when I pray, I started to learn the prayers like I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I stopped listening what's happening, and I realized that when I start praying, the God will come into the prayer and we will pray together, and then it's not dry. It has that power. And when I started to pray, like 2.5 years ago, I started to pray for what I saw in a vision is going to happen. It has happened this year, and after a few weeks praying, my prayer went dry. The God disappeared. I mean, it was like God isn't in that prayer anymore. And in beginning, in beginning of this year, or in the end of last year, someone came to me and prayed for me and told that she need to pray for me so my prayer comes back alive. And that was really strange. And then it became back alive, and I saw how the devil went from North Korea. It was in North Korea, the devil was doing something to prevent the peace. And then I saw my prayer, what I did 2 years ago, started to live. And everything that I saw there before happened really in a spirit. And then later on, I got the news, what has happened. I mean, the news, I already knew that in that time when we got the first news that about Korea peace, I knew that it's not yet like that. But anyway, I saw that. But anyway, my question was about how did that prayer die? I mean, it went really dry.
Well, maybe this is, I can't say I know this for sure, but I do know that this is how a lot of prayers work, is that there is something. Have you heard of, do you know who Dutch Sheets is? Have you heard of him? No? Okay, well, he wrote this book called An Appeal to Heaven. And there's something in it that really struck a chord with me that talked about the synergy of the ages. And it was how when different people pray, and it could be generations apart, but when different people pray, it starts filling up a bowl, basically, until someone else prays and the bowl overfills and then it manifests. Okay? Now, this is something I'd never thought of before, really, and as I was pressing into this, I got so much confirmation about this is a real thing. It's about how we work together in different generations. And it's about why your prayers, they seem to go dry, if you will, because there has to be other people who partner with that prayer to then make that overflow to manifestation. And so that, I don't understand the why behind it. I just know that that's what happens. And so that could be what happened to you in that moment, or in that time of continual prayer, and then nothing's happening, even though you know it's true. And then someone else comes alongside and just adds to that. And then it starts watering that little bowl again. You know what I mean? To where it will manifest. So I don't know if that's what she was referring to or not, but as you were speaking about that, that's what reminded me of.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a guess.
Thank you.
All right. So any other questions, you guys? We have a couple minutes before we need to engage in heaven. Aaron, Michael?
Sorry, I'm talking so much today. I just wanted to comment on what Tom said. Yeah, that's something that, you know, I've experienced personally too. And I feel like, Christine, exactly what you were saying goes right into what manifested in that. Because for me, I was in a season where the Lord had been speaking into me about my identity, about my call, about my purpose. Like I was saying, I was having these basically like secret little rendezvous with the Lord because I knew I was supposed to be engaging with him. But I kept, you know, being told that, you know, the Lord's not going to take you and press you in his physical heart. You're not, you know, mature enough in spiritual things, or haven't been in Christianity long enough and all these things, you know. And it got to the point, and the Lord would send people who would like prophesy into me at like these revival meetings and stuff. One person even like literally in the middle of the meeting just walked up to me, the minister, and just handed me a handful of cash and started prophesying about like provision and stuff like that. But so much around me and people who were like speaking into my life, it was so heavy and dark and like, that's not allowed, you're not allowed, that I went to this place, even though the Lord was speaking to me, where I kind of shriveled up. And I remember one day on my way to this school that I was involved in at this church, just crying out to the Lord, because I got to a place, I was so low, and I was literally driving and I was screaming at the top of my lungs as I'm driving, saying like, Jesus, where are you? Like, I know you don't leave me. I know you don't forsake me, but I can't feel you right now. And I'm not one of those people who thinks you always have to have goosebumps or like chills or be drunk in the spirit or whatever. But I was like, I right now need that, like, because I can't feel it today. And I got to a place where I was so dry, as you were saying, Tom, that I was even having thoughts of suicide, of actually like ending my life, and so that day I pulled up to the church to walk in for class. And as I drive up, I'm trying to fix my face and pretend like I'm okay, because I was told I wasn't allowed to go, not be happy. And so I walk in, I'm trying to pretend like I'm okay. And the person who was speaking, because we had guest ministers every week, comes in and is hugging everyone. Everyone's getting drunk in the spirit. So I'm like, cool, this is going to be it. They hugged me. I didn't feel anything. And I was like, dang it, and I'm not the kind of person who fakes it. So I was like, oh man, Then halfway through their teaching, they come over and they take my hand, still teaching the whole class. They just took my hand. And I just started weeping, like bawling for like 5 minutes straight. And they walked away. They came back and did the same thing. And again, weeping, bawling for 5 minutes straight. After class, I was on the floor, totally slain in the presence of the Lord. And this person comes up and puts their hand on my forehead and said, Erin Michael, you are called to live beyond the veil. That is your destiny. That's your call. That's part of your purpose. We all have access. We're all supposed to go, but that is part of your destiny, and just really spoke this into me powerfully. And that is when things started shifting for me. And that is when that dryness left, and I was able to see, like, yes, Lord, even though these ministers who are coming in are hearing all these weird lies and stuff about me, this one specific minister and then the other person who was with them both just spoke so powerfully into me, to a way that even afterward, when I mentioned it, and the people around me were still like, oh, you're horrible, don't believe that, they're just saying it because they wanted to or whatever, I still, because I had been revived in that, like, it didn't go, and I still was able to just keep pressing in with this just new revived spirit of what the Lord had given me. But like Christine was saying, when someone else comes in and puts that prayer and that petition in, and then it overflows, and it's just about, just knowing that when he's having us press into these things and pray into these things, even if it seems dry for, a little while, like, someone's going to come along and put that prayer in. And I've seen it, like, literally the bowls, like I was just looking at it, and it's these bowls of incense, and it's like they're get to a place where they're about to boil over. And then one more prayer goes in. That's literally sometimes just like a Lord, please. And it just all comes pouring over as that last prayer just touches down. And then there's that whole shift. So when you get into a season of dryness, just don't let it shake your faith. Just stay steadfast in it, because there's purpose behind everything. So yeah. And then Anyan, sorry, what? Were you gonna say something, Christine?
Tom was waving. Hold on, are you trying to talk, Tom? No? Okay. Yes, go ahead with Enyanwu.
So Enyanwu said, sometimes my prayers go dry after a rich communication with God. He revealed to me that I was getting so excited and running ahead of his next step. I was no longer in sync with him. He now shows me his steps imprinted in substance, so I can stay in his steps in my processes.
That's good. Cool. All right. Well, y'all, before we engage in heaven, just in case someone has to hop off, I want to let you know, if you have finished all 6 sessions of this class and you are wanting more, I do have a mentoring group that you're welcome to join. We meet on Sundays at 2 p.m. Central Daylight Time. So a lot of you are from different countries, so you'll have to figure out what time that is for you. But anyway, I guess, hey, it'd be easy to figure out because we start this class at 1 o'clock. So it'd be 1 hour later than we start this, except for on Sunday, okay? So anyway, we do that on Sundays at 2 p.m. And what we do is kind of the same thing as what we do here, except for there isn't a specific teaching assignment that I have. Basically, if God gives me something to speak on, I do, but most of the time it comes from people's interactions. And so most of the time when we're in that group, it's a lot more intimate. People talk more about their own experiences, what they're going through, how their engaging time is happening, if they have questions about something, or if it's going really well, or if it's going very terrible, whatever it is. We're able to open up and share about these things and learn from each other. And then there is time for question answers too, just like there is here. And we always engage in heaven together at the end. So anyway, if you guys want to join that, you're welcome to, if you've finished all 6 sessions of this class. If you have not, you can go and catch up on the recordings, or you can just go through this again if you'd like, the next round that we have. But anyway, I want to let you know that also we do, for the mentoring group, ask for a $7 a month donation, if possible, to pitch in for technology costs. If you can't afford that, you're still welcome to come, of course, but that's just, we try to help each other out by doing that. So anyway, wanted to let you guys know that before we engage. And I did just see that Tracy said, I've always experienced that when I'm feeling dry, I stop to check where I'm out of alignment. Father told me that he never leaves us. It's us that turn away, most times without being conscious of it. So true. Good word. All right, well, let's engage in heaven together, shall we? Yes. Okay. I'm going to stop my video. If you guys want to, you can do the same. Well, like always, if you receive anything from the Lord that you're seeing or experiencing, if you would put it in the chat box, everyone would appreciate it, I'm sure, because even though it might seem really strange, someone else might be experiencing something similar that they need encouragement about as well. So anyway, we will go together, but if Jesus leads you somewhere completely different, go with him. Trust that. It's not unusual. So anyway, let's just focus our hearts and our minds right now. Oh, Jesus, we want to commit our imagination to you. Thank you for leading us. And today I ask that you just surround us with your protection, and that you protect us with your angels, as well as Holy Spirit, just completely create a bubble around us so that we can be completely safe in your care. Thank you, Lord. And Jesus, if you would just take us wherever you want us to go today. We want to grow and be in alignment with you. If you want to show us blueprints, or engage at the timeline, or even just go somewhere completely different, we just yield it all to you right now. Thank you. I just saw that he was leading us into this valley. It was a beautiful valley, not one that looks bad or anything. It wasn't dark, but it's like we went down this mountain into this valley, and he's wanting us to interact with the people who are on this mountain. And I see that there are people who don't even know that we're here, who God is wanting us to release things over in the spirit. So I don't know if they're people we know or not. They might be your family. They might be people you have authority over, and there might be people that you've not even met before. We're in the kingdom of God, where we're looking from heaven into the earth. So how we're interacting here is kind of like a reflection of what's happening in the earth. I just saw these people who were like on their knees on the ground and putting cups out, like they're so thirsty. And so I just take this living water that Jesus poured from this pitcher, and I just pour it into these cups for them. Drink of the water that Jesus has, and you won't be thirsty. Aaron Michael said, wow, yes, I feel like these are the people that our prayers are supposed to partner with to overflow the bowls of incense. Mm. Lucille says, I'm in a city with beggars. See if Jesus has anything that you're supposed to give to them. Aaron Michael said, some of our family members from the past, present, and future, some are people who we are connected with. Some are just individuals the Lord has given us a temporary mandate to bless. Lucille says, we're going to a road to the glory light of God. That's really interesting because God just showed me that I was supposed to pour his glory light over them, and I just saw over their heads were just pouring this light. Thank you. Aaron Michael said, oh yes. Tracy said, I saw a hand scattering glittering particles like when you sow seed that shone in rainbow light. Oh, that's awesome. Lucille said, we're going into the light and the atmosphere is getting so heavy now. I saw Jesus just gather us all together in kind of a tight circle and put this kind of ring around us. And it was sort of I guess, more of a guidance than just protection, but like a place to guide us the right way. I feel like the road that we're walking on is like has these cliffs on the side where it's kind of a narrow road and we have to be careful where we're walking. Gloria said, I see some of them opening a scroll for an assignment. Stephanie said, saw a golden waterfall and people being immersed in it, soaked in anointing. Lucille said, yes, it's like brick road. I need that waterfall. Someone just prophesied that over me today that I need to be in this waterfall that they saw. So I just want to go into that waterfall and soak. Aaron Michael said, interesting, I'm seeing passports falling from the atmosphere and they're landing in our hearts. Some are laid out in paths before us and it's about stepping on them and they become a part of you as you step on it. And Aaron Michael said it's about having authority in nations the Lord has given us mandates for. And Lucille said, I can see flags as nations. Dottie said, I pictured like a farm and left a small shed-sized house and saw a silo. And then Lucille said, I can see this flag. And Gloria said, I see a large angel in the distance as if he's watching over these people. And Lucille said, a Jamaican flag and a Korean flag too. Lucille said, I can see we're going down like a brick stairs. Lucille said, we're waving the flags. I have a flag and it's like we're waving it. Just as you saw that, I saw myself waving an appeal to heaven flag. It's funny. And then Lucille said, there are people, I don't know if they're the witnesses. Stephanie said, saw Dan's anointing being released. Lucille said, they're cheering for us. It's like a celebration. Yes, I see a bunch of the cloud of witnesses as well as angels. They're all together and like pulling out these big banners, and they have these long banners that they're putting up and making a big celebration out of this. Stephanie said, I see a fountain with crystal colors, rainbow fountain of water. And Yanu said, set the captives free. Lucille says, I saw Aaron Michael with green and some flashy clothes. And then someone else said, God is taking people in higher resolution or in Him. Thank you, Lord. Gloria said, Christine, I see you standing under the waterfall. You are holding your arms out perpendicular to your body. As the gold runs over your body, the gold is going into places for stronger anointing. Yes, thank you, Gloria. Stephanie said, I've not been able to do much last 2 days. He just makes me lay in anointing. It's a good place to be. Lucille said, the sky is blue. The Lord just highlighted it. And then Aaron Michael says, I'm having my vision checked like you do when you go to the eye doctor, the very detailed exam, like when they put in the drops and use those different lights in order to look inside your eyes, and like the visual field test. Interesting. He's doing something with our vision in the natural and in the spirit, something about the way our vision affects our minds and thoughts. Yes, in the natural, but also in the spirit, helping us to understand and believe what we see in the spirit and clarity to walk in it. Betty says, I see the waterfall as well. And Yanu said, quickening, resurrection with Christ of the downtrodden, broken and bound globally. And then someone else said that they see waterfalls too. Stephanie said, for Christine, a word, patience. And then Aaron Michael said, I'm hearing a trumpet. Lucille says, wow, the witnesses from different nations are giving some things as an offering to the Lord for their nation. Aaron Michael said, and drums. Lucille said, the Lord is here, yay. Someone said, I see a lot of sand in someone's mountain. And Lucille says, we're all kneeling before Jesus. I saw, as we were kneeling before Jesus, I saw him just turn toward Mount Zion and point us all toward Mount Zion, like we're worshiping Yahweh. And then Aaron Michael said, wow, I see Jesus with such joy on his face drumming. And Yanwu said, crumbling, falling into the sea of an old demonic religious order. Christ, arise, the enemy is toppled and scattered. Aaron Michael said, I love that. Lucille says, he's declaring and blessing us. Dottie says, I pictured myself wearing a Ugandan green robe and I lifted something up for them, arms in a V, maybe like a banner. Maybe my hands were empty. I don't know. Lucille said, there's a celebration. I can see confetti everywhere. There's an angel that looks kind of like a man, and he's handing out these scrolls to all of us. And he just said to me, take and eat. And so, when you eat something in the heavenly places, it just becomes part of you. So I'm going to eat it by faith. Lucille said, we're dancing and singing and jumping. Betty said, yes, a huge celebration. Aaron Michael said, I see an ID card, like a driver's license, but I specifically heard ID card, but I can't make out what's on it or who it is. Lucille says, we're eating the scrolls. Aaron Michael says, and the ID card is oddly large. Lucille said, I saw Christine eating her scroll too. Haha. Lucille says, Jesus is wearing a purple robe, and Yanwu is singing Joshua in the Battle of Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down. Aaron Michael said, there are these different lights and frequencies going into and flowing out of this ID card. So weird and random seeming, I know. And then Lucille said, some are blowing the trumpets. Tracy said Psalm 47. Lucille said, like in a school band. And someone else said, I saw God breaking someone's chains, but chain came back and was soon gone again. Immediately after chain was totally gone, this woman showed how much power she has in God. That's cool. And Betty said, the music is glorious. And then Enyanu said, behold, I make all things new. Well, Jesus, we just want to commit all of this to you right now. Thank you so much for revealing all these things to us. Please keep revealing all your wonders to us. Let heavenly culture become our norm as we're citizens of heaven. And thank you so much for accepting us into your family, Yahweh. We really love you, and we honor you, Father, for everything that you're doing and how powerful your love is toward us. It's so great. Thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of your world. We love you. We love the connection we have here. So please just continue to connect us with others around the world who love you and who you love. Thank you, Lord. Amen. Hello. Well, guys, it has been a very good round of classes. But today is the end. So anyway, I will have to say goodbye. It's already 3:04. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll catch you on the flip side. I'll be posting later the recording of this, and then also the link to our mentoring group if you'd like to join that. So anyway, yes, you're welcome. Thank you all. Love ya. All right.
Love y'all.
See you later,
Bye.
guys. Bye-bye.